How do you wake up after 6 months and learn your own son gave away your home while you were unconscious? Why did my daughter-in-law act like I was already gone and tell me to find another place? What they didn't know was that I would handle it the only way I trust, quietly, through systems, paper trails, and consequences. My name is Galen Rook. I'm 52 years old, and I spent 12 years in the Army as a logistics NCO before I figured out that civilian life suited me better. I bought a small house in a quiet neighborhood, kept to myself, fixed things that broke, and raised my son the best way I knew how, with structure, honesty, and the expectation that a man's word means something. I'm not loud. I don't need to be the center of attention. I observe, I plan, and I execute. That's how I survived deployment after deployment. That's how I thought I'd survive regular life. Then I woke up in a hospital bed after 6 months of nothing and learned that my own son had given my house away while I was unconscious. The fluorescent light above my bed hummed like an insect. White ceiling tiles stretched out in a grid above me. The smell of disinfectant burned my nostrils. My mouth tasted like copper and stale cotton, and there were tubes running under my skin that I didn't remember anyone putting there. Someone had been breathing for me, feeding me, turning me in the bed like a piece of furniture. 6 months, just gone. The door opened. Ivo walked in with that smile he'd perfected somewhere around his teenage years, the one that looked warm until you realized it never reached his eyes. 29 years old now. He wore a button-down shirt I didn't recognize, expensive looking. His hair was styled differently, gelled back in a way that made him look older than he was. "Dad, you're awake. Thank God." He pulled a chair close to the bed, but not too close. We were so worried. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. I tried to speak. My throat felt like I'd swallowed gravel. A nurse appeared from somewhere behind him with ice chips, helped me swallow. Ivo watched with that same practiced concern, the kind you see in pharmaceutical commercials. "How long?" I managed to croak. 6 months. You've been out since May." He glanced at his phone, then back at me. There's a lot we need to talk about, Dad. A lot has happened." That's when Mireya appeared in the doorway. My daughter-in-law, 27, beautiful in that sharp-edged way that always made me think of glass. Expensive hair, expensive clothes, expensive everything. She'd always reminded me of someone who was constantly calculating the value of every room she walked into. She nodded at me like I was a distant relative. "Galen, good to see you conscious. Not good to see you alive. Not we missed you. Conscious. Like I'd been an inconvenience that finally resolved itself." Ivo cleared his throat. His knee bounced, a nervous habit from childhood that he'd never quite shaken. "Dad, while you couldn't make decisions, we had to handle some things. The house, your house. There were problems, maintenance issues, property taxes piling up, legal complications with the mortgage insurance." I watched his mouth move, watched the way his eyes kept darting to Mireya, like he was checking to see if he was saying the right words. Watched Mireya shift her weight from one expensive heel to the other, her arms crossed, her face arranged in an expression of patient tolerance. "We gave it to Mireya's parents," he said. The words came out fast, like ripping off a bandage. "Dario and Selma, they needed stability. They'd been renting for years, and with you not able to, we thought it was the right call, the responsible thing. They're taking good care of it." The machines around me kept beeping their steady rhythm. My heart rate didn't change on the monitor. That surprised me. I felt like something had cracked open inside my chest, but the numbers stayed the same, steady, controlled. Mireya stepped closer. Her perfume cut through the hospital smell, something floral and aggressive. You'll need to find another place, obviously. Ivo and I have our apartment, and it's not suitable for 3 people. But there are programs for people in your situation, transitional housing. The social worker can help. Find another place. The house I bought 23 years ago with my discharge money and the savings from 3 deployments. The house where I taught Ivo to ride a bike in the driveway, running behind him until he found his balance. The house I'd repaired room by room with my own hands. New roof, rewired electrical, refinished floors. Every wall held something I'd built or fixed. Keys? I whispered. Ivo patted his pocket. Don't worry about that right now, Dad. Focus on getting better. We can figure out the logistics later. He stood. Mireya was already at the door, checking her phone. We'll check in tomorrow, Ivo said, but he was already backing toward the hallway. The doctors want to keep you another week for observation. Get some rest. They left. I stared at the ceiling tiles and counted them. 36. I counted them again to make sure. Still 36. My fingers worked fine when I flexed them. My mind felt clear, clearer than it had any right to be after 6 months of nothing. I could feel my toes. I could swallow. I could think. 6 months in darkness, and I woke up to find my son had erased me while I slept. A woman in blue scrubs appeared in the doorway. Older, maybe 60, with gray streaks in her dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her badge said, Win Calder, Case Manager. She had the kind of face that had seen everything twice and wasn't impressed by any of it. Mr. Rook, I heard you were awake. How are you feeling? Alive, I said. My voice sounded stronger already. She pulled up the chair Ivo had abandoned and sat down like she planned to stay. I know this is overwhelming. You've been through a significant medical event. Do you remember what happened? Some of it. I did, actually. The sudden pressure in my chest while I was checking the mail. The neighbor's face above me, shouting something I couldn't hear. The ambulance siren getting farther away instead of closer. Then nothing. Your son has been your primary contact, Wynne said carefully. He's been making medical decisions on your behalf under emergency provisions. He told me he gave away my house. Wynne's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. I can't speak to legal or property matters. That's outside my scope. But I can tell you that you have rights as a patient. If you feel you're being pressured or if decisions were made that you don't understand, there are channels. What kind of channels? Patient advocacy. Legal aid if needed. We can request a review of any documents signed on your behalf during your incapacity. She leaned forward slightly. Mr. Rook, I've been doing this job for 18 years. I've seen a lot of families handle crisis in a lot of ways. If something doesn't feel right to you, trust that feeling. I looked at her. Really looked. She wasn't offering me pity. She was offering me information, tools. I need to see my medical records, I said. Everything, from the day I came in. I can arrange that. It'll take a few days to compile everything, but it's your legal right. She stood, pulled a card from her pocket and placed it on the small table beside my bed. My direct line. If you need anything, call, even if it's just questions. After she left, I lay there and watched the light change as the sun moved across the sky outside my window. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just thought. Ivo had been 8 years old when his mother left. I raised him alone, taught him how to tie his shoes, how to throw a football, how to change a tire. I worked double shifts to keep him in good schools. I showed up to every parent-teacher conference, every school play, every soccer game where he warmed the bench, and he'd handed over my house like it was a used car he didn't need anymore. The sun was setting when my phone buzzed on the table. The nurse must have brought it in while I was sleeping. I picked it up with shaking hands, not from emotion but from 6 months of muscle atrophy. The screen showed a missed call from a blocked number, a voicemail. I pressed play. A woman's voice, older, whispering like she was afraid of being overheard. You need to ask who signed for you. The message ended. I played it again. And again. The voice was vaguely familiar. Someone from the hospital, maybe, or a neighbor I hadn't spoken to in years. But the words were clear. Who signed for you? I set the phone down and stared at the ceiling tiles. 36 of them, arranged in a grid, each one exactly the same as the last. I'd spent 12 years in the army learning how to solve problems. You identify the mission. You gather intelligence. You plan. You execute. You don't rush. You don't react. You observe until you understand the full picture, and then you move with precision. My son thought I was weak, thought 6 months in a coma had broken something essential inside me, thought I'd wake up confused and grateful and easy to manage. He was wrong. I closed my eyes and started making lists in my head. Names, dates, questions that needed answers. My mind felt sharp, focused in a way it hadn't been in years. Maybe it was the long rest. Maybe it was the clarity that comes when you realize the people you trusted most have already decided you're irrelevant. Either way, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to make threats or scenes or demands. I was going to handle this the only way I knew how. Quietly. Systematically. With paper trails and witnesses and consequences that wouldn't show up until it was too late for them to stop it. Outside my window, the sky turned from orange to purple to black. The machines kept beeping. The nurses changed shifts. Somewhere down the hall, someone was crying. I lay there in the dark and planned. Physical therapy started 3 days after I woke up. A young guy named Marcus, mid-20s, built like he lived in the gym, walked me through basic movements. Standing without falling, walking 10 feet without holding a rail, lifting my arms above my head. "You're doing great, Mr. Rook," he said, steadying me as I shuffled across the mat. "Most people in your situation take weeks to get this far." I had good motivation, I said. What I didn't tell him was that every step, every painful stretch, every moment of forcing my body to remember how to work, all of it was fuel. They'd taken my house because they thought I was helpless. Every hour I spent relearning how to walk was an hour closer to proving them wrong. During water breaks, I thought about Ivo. Not the man who'd stood in my hospital room 3 days ago, but the boy I'd raised. I remembered the first time I'd brought him home to that house. 8 years old, skinny, confused about why his mother had left and wasn't coming back. I'd knelt down in the driveway and told him the truth. "It's going to be just us now, but I promise you'll always have a home." I'd meant it. I'd built my entire life around that promise. The house was a small 2-bedroom on a quiet street. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. I'd bought it with my discharge money and what I'd saved from deployments. Back then, it needed work. The roof leaked. The electrical was a mess. The floors were scratched and warped. But I saw potential. I saw stability. I spent 5 years fixing that house. Nights after my shift at the logistics company. Weekends when Ivo was at friends' houses. I learned plumbing from YouTube videos. Rewired outlets until I understood the difference between load and line. Stripped and refinished every floor. Ivo grew up watching me work. Sometimes he'd hand me tools, ask questions. I thought I was teaching him something about self-reliance, about taking care of what's yours. Apparently, I'd taught him nothing. Mireya came into his life when he was 25. I met her at a restaurant, one of those places where the menu doesn't have prices and the portions are tiny. She was beautiful, charming, said all the right things. Her parents had emigrated from somewhere in South America, built a decent life, but always rented. She worked in marketing, talked about brands and demographics and engagement metrics like they were gospel. At first, I thought she was good for Ivo. She had ambition. She pushed him to dress better, network more, think bigger. But then came the subtle edits. Family dinners at my house became uncomfortable. She'd comment on the furniture, vintage, in a tone that meant outdated. She'd suggest restaurants instead of home-cooked meals. She'd check her phone constantly, making it clear that being there was a chore she was performing. Then came the comments about me, always gentle, always wrapped in concern. Galen, have you thought about updating your style? First impressions matter. Maybe you should consider a financial advisor. At your age, planning ahead is crucial. Do you ever feel like you're stuck? Like life is just passing by? Ivo started echoing her. Suddenly, my opinions were old-fashioned. My routines were set in stone. My habit of staying home on weekends became isolating yourself. Family dinners shifted from my house to their apartment, then to restaurants. Then they stopped inviting me altogether. I didn't fight it. I figured he was building his own life, and that's what sons do. I figured they'd come around eventually. I figured wrong. I remember the last family dinner we had at my place. It was March, 2 months before everything went dark. Ivo and Mireya showed up late, both looking at their phones more than at me. I'd made pot roast, Ivo's favorite when he was growing up. I'd set the table properly, put out cloth napkins, even bought a decent bottle of wine. Mireya took one look at the meal and said, "Oh, I'm actually trying to eat cleaner these days. Do you have any quinoa?" I didn't have quinoa. I had pot roast that I'd spent 3 hours preparing. Ivo barely touched his plate, kept checking his phone, responding to work messages. When I asked about his job, he gave me one-word answers. When I asked about their plans for the future, Mireya launched into a monologue about investment properties and building equity and how smart people were leveraging their assets. I listened and nodded and realized somewhere in the middle of her speech that she was talking about my house, about how much it was worth, about how it was just sitting there while I did nothing with it. After they left that night, I sat at the table for a long time, looking at the full plates and the cloth napkins no one had used. Something had shifted. I couldn't name it then, but I felt it. The distance between us had become permanent. I should have paid more attention. "Mr. Rook, you with me?" Marcus was waving a hand in front of my face. I'd stopped mid-step, frozen in some memory. "Yeah, sorry." "You look angry." "That's good, use it. Anger's great fuel for this kind of work." He had no idea. After therapy, they wheeled me back to my room. My body was exhausted, but my mind was racing. I couldn't stop thinking about the mechanics of what they'd done. Property transfer isn't simple. You can't just hand over a house like you're lending someone a sweater. There are titles, deeds, notaries. There's paperwork. Who signed for you? That voicemail played on a loop in my head. Someone had signed documents in my name. Someone had authorized a transfer while I was unconscious, unable to consent, unable to even know it was happening. Wynne stopped by that evening with a folder. "Your medical records, everything from admission to present day." I took the folder like it was treasure. "Thank you. There's a lot there. Take your time. If you have questions, call me." She paused at the door. "Mr. Rook, I don't know what you're planning, but whatever it is, stay inside the lines. Anger is understandable. Acting on it the wrong way isn't." "I'm not planning anything," I said. "I just want to understand what happened." She nodded, but I could tell she didn't believe me. Smart woman. After she left, I opened the folder. Page after page of medical jargon, charts, medication logs. I wasn't looking for the medical details. I was looking for signatures, authorizations. Who had the right to make decisions on my behalf? Ivo's name appeared over and over. Emergency contact, next of kin, primary decision maker. But there were notes in the margins, timestamps that didn't quite line up. A doctor's comment. Family member insistent on DNR status, but patient had no advance directive on file. Another note. Son requesting transfer to long-term care facility. Recommend psych evaluation of patient first to establish baseline capacity. I read that line 3 times. Psych evaluation to establish capacity. They'd been planning to move me somewhere permanent. somewhere I couldn't come back from. The timeline was becoming clearer. In late May, less than 2 weeks after my medical event, Ivo had already started asking about long-term care options. By early June, according to one note, he'd inquired about the process for obtaining power of attorney for someone in a persistent vegetative state. The hospital social worker had recommended he consult an attorney because the process required court involvement. But somehow, by mid-June, a deed transfer had been recorded, without court involvement, without proper authorization, which meant they'd found another way. I pulled out a notepad from the bedside drawer and started writing. Dates, events, questions. May 12th. Medical event, admitted to hospital. May 24th. First note about long-term care inquiry. June 2nd. Power of attorney discussion with social worker June 15th. Deed transfer recorded. Question. How did the transfer happen without legal authority? Question. Who notarized the document? Question. Who physically signed my name? My phone buzzed. Ivo. Hey Dad, just checking in. How's therapy going? Fine. Good, that's good. Listen, Mireya and I were talking. Once you're discharged, we found a place that might work. It's a transitional facility, helps people get back on their feet. They have meal plans, activities, medical staff on site. It's actually pretty nice. I'll figure something out. Dad, be realistic. You can't live alone right now. You need support. This place, I said I'll figure it out. Silence on the line. Then Mireya's voice in the background sharp. Let him make his own mistakes. Ivo covered the phone, but I heard the muffled argument. When he came back, his tone had shifted. Less concerned, more annoyed. Fine. You're an adult. But don't expect us to bail you out when you realize you can't handle it. I won't. He hung up. I set the phone down and stared at the folder in my lap. Somewhere in this stack of paper was the proof I needed. Somewhere in the timeline of my unconscious months, they'd made a move they thought was permanent. I just had to find it. The next morning, a different doctor made rounds. Younger, less careful with her words. She checked my vitals, reviewed my chart, and casually mentioned, "Your family was very involved in your care. Your son visited almost daily in the beginning." In the beginning? The first month or so. Then it tapered off. That's normal. People have lives to get back to. She made a note in the chart. But he was very engaged with treatment decisions early on. Very engaged. I filed that phrase away. After she left, I used the hospital phone to call information. Got the number for the county recorder's office. When someone answered, I explained I needed information about a property transfer. You'll need to come in person or submit a written request with proper identification. What if I just want to know who notarized a document? That information is on the recorded document, public record. You can search online. I thanked her and hung up. Public record. Which meant once I had internet access, I could find out exactly who had notarized my forged signature. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. 36 tiles. I'd counted them so many times, I'd memorized the pattern of water stains in the corner. My body ached from therapy. My mind ached from reading medical records I barely understood. But underneath all of it was something cold and clear. I remembered the last normal day before everything went dark. It was a Tuesday in May. I'd checked the mail, sorted through bills, noticed the neighbor's fence was leaning, and made a mental note to offer help. I'd made dinner, nothing fancy, just chicken and rice. I'd watched the news. I'd planned to repaint the bathroom that weekend. Then my chest had tightened, like someone was squeezing my heart with a fist. The mail scattered across the driveway. The neighbor's face appeared above me, shouting. The sky was so blue. That's what I remember most, how impossibly blue the sky was, like someone had cranked up the saturation. Then nothing. And in that nothing, while my body was sustained by machines and medications, while doctors kept my heart beating and my lungs breathing, my son decided I was already gone. Not coming back. Not worth the wait. Not worth the house I'd promised would always be his home. He'd erased me with paperwork and phone calls and conversations I'd never hear. He'd moved strangers into my space, let them sleep in my bed, eat at my table, walk across the floors I'd refinished by hand. I closed my eyes and made a promise to myself. No yelling, no begging, no threats. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me break down. I wouldn't give them ammunition to call me unstable or irrational. I would just take steps, one after another, quiet, methodical, legally sound steps, the kind of steps that look like nothing until they become everything. My phone buzzed again. Another blocked number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello? Silence. Then a man's voice, older, rough. Galen Rook? Who's this? Doesn't matter. I'm your neighbor, 2 houses down, gray house with the pickup. I knew the house. Older guy, kept to himself, worked nights. We'd nodded at each other in passing, but never really talked. I saw what happened when they moved in. Who? The Varellas. That's her parents, right? Your daughter-in-law's people? Yeah. They moved in fast, early June. Big truck, brought all their furniture, acted like they owned the place. Told everyone you weren't coming back. Said it outright. He's not coming back, so we're here now. He paused. Thought you should know. Why are you telling me this? Because it felt wrong. Still feels wrong. They're strutting around like they pulled something off. Your son and his wife were there too, handing out keys, talking about how they had to make tough decisions. It was a whole performance. Would you be willing to write that down? What you saw when you saw it? Long silence. If it came to that, yeah, I would. Thank you. He hung up. I set the phone on the table and felt something settle in my chest. Witnesses. People who saw what I couldn't see. People who remembered what they wanted me to forget. The machine next to my bed beeped its steady rhythm. Outside, the night shift nurses moved quietly down the hall. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. I thought about my house. Not the building, but what it meant. It was the first place I'd ever owned. The first place that was truly mine, earned by my work, paid for with my sweat. It was supposed to be the thing I left behind, the proof that I'd existed and built something solid. They didn't steal a building. They stole my place in the world. I turned off the light and lay in the dark, listening to the machines breathe for me. Tomorrow, I'd walk farther. Tomorrow, I'd read more records. Tomorrow, I'd take another step toward understanding exactly how they'd done it. And then, I'd take it all back. They discharged me on a Thursday, 9 days after waking up. The doctor, a careful man named Serene who spoke slowly and made eye contact when he delivered information, reviewed my vitals one last time. You're progressing faster than expected, he said, scrolling through something on a tablet. Neurologically, you're sound. Physically, you'll need ongoing therapy, but you can do that outpatient. Do you have a place arranged? Working on it. He glanced up at that, and I saw something flicker across his face. Concern, maybe, or suspicion. Your son mentioned a transitional facility. I'll handle it myself. Dr. Serene set down the tablet. Mr. Rook, I'm required to ask, do you feel safe? Is there any reason you're uncomfortable returning to family support? I appreciated the carefully chosen words. He wasn't asking if Evo was abusive. He was asking if I felt threatened. There's a difference. I feel perfectly safe, I said. I just prefer to make my own arrangements. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Fair enough. You're an adult with full capacity. But I'm noting in your file that we had this conversation, and I'm giving you resources. He handed me a paper with phone numbers, addresses, organizations with names like Elder Advocacy Network and Patient Rights Coalition. Thank you. One more thing. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. The timeline on some of your care decisions raised flags for me. Enough flags that I documented concerns about decision-making capacity at the time authorizations were requested. He held my gaze. Those notes are in your file, if you ever need them. I understood what he wasn't saying. Someone had tried to make permanent decisions about me when it wasn't clear I'd stay unconscious forever. Someone had pushed for outcomes that served them, not me, and this doctor had noticed. I appreciate that, I said. He nodded once and left. 30 minutes later, a nurse handed me discharge papers, a bag with the clothes I'd worn 9 days ago, laundered and folded, and a list of follow-up appointments. I walked out of that hospital with a cane, a folder full of documents, and a clarity I hadn't felt in years. Ivo had offered to pick me up. I told him no. He'd sounded relieved on the phone. Less hassle for him. One less thing to coordinate with Mireya. I called a taxi instead. The driver loaded my small bag into the trunk and didn't ask questions. I gave him an address for a short-stay apartment I'd found online from my hospital bed. Nothing fancy. Weekly rates, furnished, no questions asked as long as you paid up front. You need help getting inside? The driver asked when we arrived. I'm good. The apartment was on the second floor of a converted house. Small living room, smaller bedroom, kitchenette with a hot plate and a mini fridge. The furniture was worn but clean. The windows overlooked a parking lot. It was the opposite of home in every way. Perfect. I sat on the edge of the bed and called Win. Mr. Rook, you're out? As of an hour ago. I wanted to thank you for everything. You don't have to thank me, that's the job. She paused. Are you okay? You have what you need? I do, but I have a question. You mentioned patient advocacy, legal channels. Where do I start? She didn't hesitate. Get a lawyer, not just any lawyer. Someone who specializes in elder law or estates. They'll understand capacity issues, undue influence, financial exploitation, and document everything. Conversations, dates, times, who said what, who was present. If something feels off legally, it probably is. Any recommendations? I'll email you a list. No guarantees, but these are people who've worked with our patients before and didn't treat them like paychecks. Thank you. Mr. Rook? Her voice shifted, became more careful. I don't know what you're walking into, but be smart. Don't let emotion drive decisions. If they took something from you, take it back the right way. I hung up and stared at the blank wall across from the bed. The right way. Not the angry way. Not the revenge fantasy way. The legal, documented consequences that stick way. My phone buzzed. Mireya. A text this time, no call. Ivo said you're staying somewhere temporary. Let us know if you need anything. We're thinking of you. I read it 3 times, analyzing the words like they were coded messages. Somewhere temporary, not your new place or your apartment. Temporary, like I was camping out, waiting for them to solve my problem. Let us know if you need anything. Translation. We've done our part. Don't ask us for more. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my laptop, old, slow, but functional, and started researching. Elder law attorneys, estates and trusts, undue influence, capacity challenges, financial exploitation. The words swam together after a while, but patterns emerged. What Ivo had described, giving away property while someone was incapacitated, wasn't simple. It required legal justification. Power of attorney, maybe. Conservatorship. Something that gave him authority to make decisions I couldn't make for myself. But I'd never signed a power of attorney. I'd never been declared incompetent. I'd been unconscious, yes. Incapable of making decisions, yes. But that's temporary. That's medical, not legal. So how did they do it? I needed to see the title company records. I needed to see what documents had been filed, what signatures appeared, who notarized what. But I couldn't just show up and demand records. I needed a lawyer to request them properly. I needed someone who could look at the timeline and tell me if it was legal or if they'd crossed a line. Wynn's email arrived. 5 names, 5 firms, brief notes next to each. Patient-focused. Doesn't rush cases. Tough but fair. I picked the one with the shortest description. Lisa Morkant. Gets results. Her office answered on the second ring. Professional voice, efficient. I explained that I needed a consultation about a property matter involving decisions made while I was incapacitated. We have an opening next Tuesday, the voice said. Nothing sooner? Let me check. Typing sounds. If you can come in tomorrow at 4, we had a cancellation. I'll take it. Name and callback number? I gave both. The voice confirmed the appointment and hung up. Just like that. No judgment, no probing questions, just an appointment on the books. I spent the rest of the afternoon walking. Not far, my body wasn't ready for distance, but enough to feel like I was doing something. The neighborhood around my temporary apartment was older, working class. Small houses with chain-link fences, cars that had seen better decades, people minded their own business. I found a public library 2 blocks away, entered, scanned the room, computer terminals along one wall, reference desk with a tired-looking woman reading a paperback. The smell of old paper and floor cleaner. I sat at a terminal in the corner and pulled up property records for my county, found my address, clicked through ownership history. There it was, a deed transfer recorded on June 15th, from me to Dario and Selma Varela. The document was stamped, notarized, filed, official. But I'd been unconscious on June 15th, still in the ICU, still on machines, still nowhere near capable of signing anything. I clicked on the document image, waited for it to load. When it finally appeared on screen, I zoomed in on the signature line. My name was there. Galen Rook, in handwriting that looked almost right. Almost. But I'd signed my name thousands of times over 52 years. I knew the way I formed the G, the way the loop in the R connected. This was close, very close, but it wasn't mine. I looked at the notary section, a name I didn't recognize, Patricia Vega, mobile notary service, an address in the next county over. I took screenshots with my phone. Then I searched for Patricia Vega, Notary Public, found a business website. Professional mobile notary services, hospitals, homes, offices, available 7 days a week. She'd specialized in going to people who couldn't come to her, which meant someone had called her, paid her, and brought her to wherever this signature had happened. And she'd notarized a document signed by someone who was unconscious in a hospital bed. Either she was part of the fraud or she'd been fooled. I saved all the information. Then I searched for the Notary Licensing Board, found a complaint form, filled it out right there in the library, detailing the date, the document, and the fact that I'd been provably incapacitated at the time of notarization. Submitted it. One more nail. The woman at the reference desk looked up as I passed. Find what you needed? Getting there. Outside, the sun was setting. I walked back to the apartment slowly, using the cane more than I wanted to admit I needed. My legs ached, my back hurt, but my mind felt sharp. They'd left a trail. Maybe they thought I'd never wake up. Maybe they thought I'd be too confused or too broken to follow it. Maybe they just didn't care. Either way, the trail existed. I made dinner, instant ramen with an egg cracked into it, the kind of meal you make when cooking is a chore, not a joy. Ate standing at the kitchenette counter, washed the bowl, sat on the couch and stared at my phone. The neighbor's number was still in my recent calls. I pulled it up, stared at it. Then I called. He answered on the third ring. Yeah? This is Galen. We talked the other night. I remember. You said you'd write down what you saw, if it came to that. Still willing. It's coming to that. I'm getting a lawyer. They'll probably want to talk to you. That's fine. I work nights, but I can make time. Why are you doing this? I asked. You don't know me. Silence. Then, my sister got pushed out of her house by her ex-husband while she was in rehab. Came home to find the locks changed, all her stuff in storage, him telling everyone she'd abandoned the place. Took her 2 years to fight it, and by then, she'd lost everything. Cost her more to get back what was hers than the place was worth. I'm sorry. Yeah, me too. That's why I'm telling you. Fight now, fight hard, and don't assume they'll just do the right thing. Because they won't. People who do this kind of thing don't suddenly grow a conscience. He hung up. I sat in the dark apartment and felt something settle deeper. This wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about the principle that people don't get to erase you just because you're temporarily vulnerable. They don't get to decide your life is over before you've stopped breathing. My phone buzzed. Another text from Ivo. Dad, call when you can. We need to talk about next steps. Next steps, like I was a project he was managing, like my future was something he'd coordinate in a group chat with Mireya. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my laptop and started a document. Timeline. Everything I could remember, everything I'd learned. Dates, names, who said what, who signed what, who moved when. I typed until my hands cramped, until the document was 3 pages long, single-spaced, every detail I could extract from memory or records. Then I saved it to 3 different places: laptop, phone, cloud. Backed it up like it was the most important thing I'd ever written. Because it was. I added new entries as I remembered them. March dinner, Mireya's comment about my house, just sitting there, May 12th. Medical event, May 24th. Ivo inquiring about long-term care, per hospital records. June 2nd, discussion about power of attorney, per hospital social worker note. June 15th, fraudulent deed transfer, recorded June, early. Varelis move in. Tell neighbors he's not coming back. Notary. Patricia Vega, mobile service, next county complaint filed with Notary Licensing Board. The list kept growing. Each entry was another piece of evidence, another thread in the web they'd woven around me. Outside, the parking lot was empty except for a few cars. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. A siren wailed on a far-off street. I lay down on the unfamiliar bed in the unfamiliar room and stared at the unfamiliar ceiling. No water stains here, just flat white paint and a smoke detector blinking its red eye in the dark. I thought about the house. My house. The way the afternoon light came through the kitchen window, the creak in the 3rd step of the front porch, the spot in the backyard where I'd planted a tree after Ivo's mother left, thinking maybe something should grow out of all that loss. I wondered if the Varellas had cut it down. I wondered if they'd painted over the height marks I'd penciled on the doorframe in the hallway, tracking Ivo's growth from age 8 to age 18. I wondered if they'd thrown away the box of photos I kept in the closet. Me and Ivo at his high school graduation, me and Ivo at his first job, me and Ivo before Mireya decided I was irrelevant. Then I stopped wondering. It didn't matter what they'd done to the space. What mattered was what they'd done to me, and what I was going to do about it. I closed my eyes and fell asleep, planning. The law office of Lisa Morcant occupied the 2nd floor of a brick building downtown. No fancy lobby, no floor-to-ceiling windows, just a plain door with a frosted glass panel and a small placard. Morcant Law, Estate Planning and Elder Advocacy. I climbed the stairs slowly, my cane tapping each step. The waiting room was small. 4 chairs, a coffee table with outdated magazines, a reception desk where a young man with neat hair looked up from his computer. Galen Rook? That's me. She's ready for you. First door on the left. Lisa Morcant stood when I entered. Mid-40s, dark suit, no jewelry, except a simple watch. Her office was organized without being sterile, files stacked neatly. A law degree from a state school on the wall. Family photos on a credenza, her with 2 kids at a beach somewhere, all of them smiling like they meant it. Mr. Rook, have a seat. She gestured to a chair across from her desk and sat back down herself. No small talk. No, how are you feeling? Or, must be tough. Just, tell me what happened. I liked her immediately. I walked her through it. The medical event in May, 6 months unconscious. Waking up to find my son had given my house to his in-laws. The timeline that didn't make sense. The documents I'd found showing a deed transfer recorded while I was in ICU. She took notes on a legal pad, her handwriting small and precise. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she set down her pen and leaned back. Did you ever execute a power of attorney? No. Living will? Healthcare directive? No. Did your son petition for conservatorship or guardianship? Not that I know of. Then he had no legal authority to transfer your property. Medical decision-making during incapacity doesn't extend to financial transactions. Those are separate. She flipped through her notes. A deed transfer requires the owner's signature or a court-authorized representative. If you were unconscious and no one had legal authority, that signature was either forged or fraudulent. The word hung in the air. Fraudulent. What can I do? We request copies of everything. The deed transfer, the notarization, any documents filed with the county. We get your medical records showing you were incapacitated at the time. We establish that the transfer was invalid. She tapped her pen against the pad. Then we file to void it. If they don't comply voluntarily, we take it to court. How long does that take? Depends. If it's clear-cut, forged signature, no legal authority, it could be quick. If they fight it, if they claim you authorized it somehow before you were incapacitated, it gets messy. She looked at me directly. Are you prepared for it to get messy? Yes. Family cases are the worst. People fight harder over personal property than they do over money. Your son will have to explain himself. His wife's parents will have to defend how they ended up in your house. It won't be pretty. I understand. She studied me for a moment. Most people in your situation want to vent. They want to tell me how hurt they are, how betrayed they feel. You haven't done that. Would it change anything? No. Then why waste time? A small smile. Fair enough. I need a retainer. $2,000 to start. That covers initial filings, record requests, correspondence. If it goes to litigation, we'll reassess. You good with that? I'd checked my bank account that morning from the library computer. Still intact. They hadn't gotten that far. Yet. I can do that. Good. I'll draft a letter to your son and the Varellas informing them we're investigating the transfer and requesting voluntary reversal. Give them a chance to fix it before we escalate. She stood, extended a hand. This is fixable, Mr. Rook. Might take time, might take effort, but it's fixable. I shook her hand. Her grip was firm, confident. No pity, no condescension, just business. I left the office feeling something I hadn't felt since waking up in that hospital bed. Momentum. Next stop was the bank, the branch where I'd had accounts for 20 years. I walked in with my ID and a copy of my discharge papers just in case. The teller was young, efficient. How can I help you? I need to verify my accounts, make sure everything's in order. She typed on her keyboard, frowned, typed some more. One moment. She picked up a phone, spoke quietly to someone. A manager appeared, older woman, stern face. Mr. Rook, can you come with me? She led me to a small office in the back, closed the door. We've had some activity on your accounts that raised flags. Can you confirm you're the only authorized user? I should be. What kind of activity? Attempted wire transfer, blocked by our fraud system because it triggered several alerts. Dormant account, sudden large transfer, recipient outside your established pattern. She pulled up a screen, angled it so I could see. Someone tried to move $15,000 to an external account 3 weeks ago. Who? The request came through online banking, used your login credentials. I was in a coma 3 weeks ago. Her expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. I see. In that case, we need to file an identity theft report and reset all your security credentials. Do you know who might have accessed your account? Yes, I said. My son. She typed notes into the system. We'll flag this internally and coordinate with our fraud department. You'll need to change all your passwords, security questions, the works. We can do that now if you have time. We spent the next 30 minutes locking down my accounts. New passwords, new security questions, alerts set up for any transfer over $100. By the time I left, my finances were mine again. But the damage was clear. They'd tried to take more than the house. They'd tried to empty me out completely. I walked to a coffee shop 2 blocks away, ordered black coffee I didn't really want, and sat in a corner booth. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, from anger. Pure, cold anger that had nowhere to go. They hadn't just betrayed me. They'd planned it, timed it, executed it like a strategy. I pulled out my phone and opened the banking app with my new credentials, stared at the transaction history. Everything looked normal until mid-June. Then, login from an unfamiliar device, attempt to change recovery email, attempt to add an external account for transfer. All blocked by fraud systems I didn't even know existed. Thank God for automated security. I thought about calling Ivo, demanding answers, asking him to explain how he could do this to his own father. Then I remembered what the neighbor had said. Don't assume they'll just do the right thing. And I remembered what Lisa Morcant had said. Family cases are the worst. They wouldn't fix this voluntarily. They wouldn't apologize. They wouldn't suddenly develop a conscience. I needed to treat this like what it was, a hostile operation by people who'd already decided I was irrelevant. I opened a new note on my phone and updated my timeline document. June 15th, deed transfer recorded, while I was unconscious in ICU. 3 weeks ago, attempted wire transfer blocked by bank fraud system. June, early. Neighbor confirms Varelis moved into house, claimed I wasn't coming back. Today, bank manager confirms login attempts from unfamiliar device. Every entry was a nail. I just needed enough of them to seal the case shut. My phone buzzed. Ivo. Dad, where are you? I stopped by the hospital and they said you'd been discharged. I got an apartment. Without telling us, Dad, we could have helped. I didn't need help. Silence. Then Mireya's voice in the background, sharp. He's being ridiculous. Ivo sighed. Look, we're trying to support you here, but you're making it difficult. Can we at least see where you're staying? Make sure it's safe? No. Dad. Ivo, I need to ask you something. Did you try to access my bank account while I was in the hospital? The silence was long enough to be an answer. I had to pay some of your bills, the mortgage, utilities. I used your checkbook. Did you try to wire transfer money out of my savings? What? No. Dad, where is this coming from? The bank flagged suspicious activity. $15,000. Someone tried to move it 3 weeks ago. That wasn't me. Maybe it was identity theft. You should report. I did report it. To the bank and to my lawyer. Another long silence. When Ivo spoke again, his voice had changed. Harder. You got a lawyer? I did. For what? Property issues. Decisions made without my consent. You'll be hearing from her soon. I hung up before he could respond. My heart was pounding, not from fear, from the sheer satisfaction of finally pushing back. Let him panic, let him call Mireya, let them scramble and strategize and try to figure out what I knew and what I could prove. I finished the coffee, left the shop, and walked back to my apartment. Every step hurt. My body still wasn't recovered, but my mind was clear, and my path was set. By the time I reached my door, my phone had 11 missed calls, all from Ivo, all ignored. I sat on the couch and checked my email. Lisa Morcant had sent a draft of the letter she'd be sending to Ivo and the Varelas. Professional, precise, no emotion, just facts, property transfer under investigation, request for voluntary reversal, evidence of incapacity at time of signing. I approved it with a single word. Send. Then I opened the document with my timeline and kept adding details. Every conversation, every observation, every piece of the puzzle. The machine of justice moves slowly, but once you feed it the right information, It doesn't stop. Outside, the sun was setting. Traffic sounds drifted up from the street. Someone's TV played through thin walls. I thought about the house, my house, and I imagined the moment when I'd walk back through that door, not as a visitor, not as a guest, but as the owner. They'd learn what I already knew. You can't erase someone just because they're temporarily vulnerable, and consequences don't disappear just because you ignore them. Lisa's letter hit them on a Wednesday. I know because Ivo called 17 times that day. I didn't answer. Mireya texted, "This is insane. You're tearing the family apart over a misunderstanding." Not a misunderstanding. Fraud. But I didn't reply. The Varellas called from a number I didn't recognize. Left a voicemail. Dario's voice, thick accent, trying to sound reasonable. "Mr. Rook, we need to talk. This was all done properly. Your son had authority. We have papers. Let's settle this like adults." I saved the voicemail. Evidence that they knew exactly what was happening. I spent that week quietly. Physical therapy twice. Walks around the neighborhood. Meals that were functional, not enjoyable. And research. Hours at the library, reading case law, understanding the mechanics of deed fraud, capacity challenges, undue influence. I wasn't a lawyer, but I could read, I could learn, I could understand the battlefield. Lisa called on Friday. They responded. Well, their lawyer responded. They got a lawyer? Of course they did. That's how you know they're scared. I heard papers shuffling. Their position is that you verbally authorized the transfer before your medical event. They're claiming Ivo acted on your explicit instructions. That's a lie. I know, and we'll prove it. But they're going to fight, which means we need more evidence. Witnesses who can testify to your relationship with your son before the incident. Medical experts who can establish the timeline of your incapacity. Anyone who can contradict their story. I have a neighbor. He saw them move in, heard what they said. Good. Get me his contact info. Anyone else? I thought about Dr. Serene, the notes he'd made about capacity concerns. The hospital doctor who treated me, he documented red flags about decision-making. Perfect. I'll subpoena his records. She paused. Mr. Rook, this is going to get expensive, and it's going to take months. Are you prepared for that? Yes. And you're sure you want to push this? Because once we file in court, there's no going back. Your relationship with your son will be permanently damaged. It's already damaged, I said. He did that, not me. Fair enough. I'll draft the complaint. We'll file within 2 weeks. After she hung up, I sat in the small apartment and felt the weight of what I'd set in motion. Legal battles, court dates, depositions, my life dissected by strangers in suits. But the alternative was accepting that my son had erased me and got away with it. Not acceptable. I went for a walk. Longer this time. My body was getting stronger. The cane was more for balance than support now. I walked past the library, past the coffee shop, past blocks of houses that all looked the same. I found myself on my old street without meaning to. Muscle memory, maybe. Or just the pull of something familiar in a life that had become completely foreign. I stood 3 houses down and looked at my place. The house I'd bought, fixed, lived in for over 2 decades. Different curtains in the windows. Unfamiliar car in the driveway. A lawn chair I'd never seen on the front porch. Someone had planted flowers in the beds I used to keep mulched and clean. It looked lived in, comfortable, like nothing was wrong. I watched for 10 minutes. No one came out. No signs of activity. Just a quiet house on a quiet street, occupied by people who had no right to be there. My phone rang. The neighbor, Rafe. You're on the street. I looked around, spotted him 2 houses down on his porch, phone to his ear, watching me. Yeah. Come here. I walked over. He was older than I'd thought, maybe 60, weathered face, work-worn hands. He gestured to the second chair on his porch. Sit. I sat. We didn't say anything for a minute, just sat there like two old men watching the world go by. They're not home much, Rafe finally said. The parents. They come and go. Your son and his wife show up sometimes. Act like they're checking on things. You've been watching. Someone should. He lit a cigarette, offered me one. I declined. They had a housewarming thing last month. Invited the neighbors. I didn't go, but I heard about it. They were telling people you'd signed the house over. Said you wanted them to have it. I didn't. I figured. He took a drag, exhaled smoke into the evening air. What are you doing about it? Lawyer. Court. The right way. He nodded slowly. Good. My sister tried to fight her ex without a lawyer. He buried her in paperwork, dragged it out until she couldn't afford to keep fighting. I'm not stopping. I believe you. He stood, went inside, came back with a notepad and pen, wrote something down, handed it to me. That's my statement. Dates, times, what I saw, what I heard. I'll sign it, get it notarized if you need. I read it. 2 pages, detailed, precise. Everything from the moving truck to the conversations to the housewarming, everything. Thank you. Thank me when you get your house back. I left his porch feeling like I had an ally. Not a friend, exactly, but someone who understood that this was about more than property. It was about principle. Back at the apartment, I scanned Rafe's statement with my phone and emailed it to Lisa. Then I made dinner. Real food this time, not instant meals. Chicken breast, frozen vegetables, rice. It was bland but solid. Progress. My phone buzzed. Evo again. This time I answered. What? Dad, we need to talk. Face to face. No. You're being unreasonable. We're family. We can work this out. You gave away my house while I was unconscious. You tried to access my bank account. What exactly is there to work out? I didn't. He stopped, regrouped. The bank thing was a misunderstanding. And the house, Dad, you weren't coming back. The doctors said, what doctors? The ICU team. They said you might not wake up, that we should prepare for long-term care or worse. And you decided that meant you could take my property. It wasn't like that. Mireya's parents needed help. They'd been struggling to find a place, and your house was just sitting there. My house, not yours. Mine. Legally, don't talk to me about legally. You had no legal authority. You forged my signature or convinced someone to do it for you. Either way, it's fraud. Silence. Then, you're really going to do this? Take us to court? Destroy our family over a house? You destroyed the family when you treated me like a dead man who still breathes. I hung up. My hands were shaking again. Not anger this time. Something else. Grief, maybe. For the son I thought I'd raised. For the relationship I'd thought we had. But grief doesn't undo fraud, and sentiment doesn't restore property rights. I spent the evening organizing my evidence. Every document, every email, every text. Every voicemail. I created a physical folder, old school, paper copies, because I didn't trust digital files not to disappear. Around midnight, someone knocked on my door. I looked through the peephole. Mireya. I didn't open it. Galen, I know you're in there. We need to talk. No. Please. This has gotten out of hand. Evo is devastated. His parents are elderly. They just wanted stability. They wanted my house. It's not about the house. It's about family, about taking care of each other. We thought we were helping. By stealing from me? Her voice changed, sharper. You weren't going to wake up. Everyone said so. We had to make decisions, hard decisions, and now you're punishing us for trying to do the right thing. The right thing would have been waiting. The right thing would have been keeping my property safe until I could decide for myself. You didn't do that. Because we didn't think there'd be a yourself to decide. She was yelling now. You were gone, Galen. For 6 months. No one thought you'd come back. But I did come back, and you'd already erased me. I heard her breathing hard on the other side of the door. Then footsteps. She was leaving. I watched through the peephole as she walked down the stairs, got into her car, and drove away. Then I triple-checked the door was locked and went to bed. That night I dreamed about the house. Not the way it looked when the Varellas moved in, the way it looked when I first bought it, broken, neglected, full of potential. I dreamed about fixing it room by room, about Ivo handing me tools, learning how to measure twice and cut once. I woke up angry at myself for still caring about those memories. The next morning, I went to a hardware store. Not for tools, for practical items, file folders, labels, a fireproof document safe, a cheap notebook, work gloves. The cashier rang it up without comment. Moving? Something like that. I carried the bags back to my apartment and organized everything. Documents in the safe, timeline in the notebook, evidence categorized and labeled. I was building a case the way I'd learned in the army, methodically, with redundancy, with attention to detail. Because wars aren't won by the loudest fighters, they're won by the most prepared. And I was preparing for a fight that would end with me standing in my own doorway, keys in my hand, watching them realize they'd lost. 2 months passed. September turned cold. My body healed. Physical therapy graduated from learning to walk to regaining strength. I got a part-time job doing inventory at a warehouse. Something simple, something that kept me moving, something that paid rent. Lisa worked her process, filed motions, requested documents, scheduled depositions. The legal machine ground forward slowly but inevitably. Ivo stopped calling. Mireya stopped texting. Their lawyer sent letters. Lisa sent letters back. It became a paper war fought in conference rooms I never saw. But I felt it moving toward something. A conclusion. A reckoning. Then Lisa called on a Tuesday in October. We have a court date. January 8th, Judge Miller presiding. It's a bench trial, no jury. We present evidence, they present their defense, the judge rules. That's 3 months away. That's fast for property disputes. The judge reviewed the preliminary evidence and wants this resolved quickly. That's good for us. What do I need to do? Keep living your life. Stay clean. No contact with them. No social media posts about the case. Nothing they can use against you. Let me handle the legal work. You just be ready to testify when the time comes. I promised I would. But 3 months felt like forever. 3 months of waiting while they lived in my house. 3 months of watching my savings dwindle on legal fees. 3 months of sleeping in a small apartment that smelled like someone else's life. I kept working, kept walking, kept planning. And I watched my old street. Not every day. Just once a week, casually, like I was passing through. The Varellas had settled in, made the house theirs, new paint on the shutters, different mailbox, a wreath on the door for fall. It made me sick. But I didn't react, didn't confront, didn't do anything stupid. I waited. November arrived. Then December. The court date got closer. Lisa prepped me for testimony. What to expect. How to answer questions. Stay calm. Stick to facts. Don't let emotion cloud the narrative. I practiced in front of a mirror. Told my story over and over until it felt like reading from a script. The medical event. Waking up. The discovery. The timeline. The fraud. 3 days before the trial, Lisa called again. Their lawyer reached out. They want to settle. No. Hear me out. They're offering to vacate the property within 60 days and pay your legal fees to date. Clean exit. No admission of wrongdoing, but they leave and you get your house back. No. Galen. They don't get to avoid consequences. They don't get to walk away like this was just a misunderstanding. If we go to trial and lose, we won't lose. You said yourself we have the evidence. Silence. Then, you're right, we do, and I think we'll win. But trials are unpredictable. Judges are human. If you want the certainty of getting your house back, I want them to face what they did, publicly, on record. I want a judgment that says they committed fraud. I want consequences. Another pause. Okay, then we go to trial. But Galen, understand something. If we win, they'll appeal. This could drag on another year. I don't care. All right, I'll tell their lawyer we're not settling. See you Tuesday at 8 a.m. Don't be late. I hung up and felt something settle in my chest. This was it. The final play. Everything I'd built over 4 months came down to one day in a courtroom. I barely slept the night before, lay awake in the dark, running through my testimony, imagining the moment the judge ruled in my favor. Imagining the look on Ivo's face, on Mireya's, on the Varela's. The alarm went off at 6. I dressed in the only suit I owned, the one I'd bought for Ivo's wedding. Ironic. Lisa met me outside the courthouse. Ready? Yes. Remember, calm, factual, direct. They're going to try to paint you as bitter and vindictive. Don't give them ammunition. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wood paneling, rows of benches, the judge's elevated platform. It felt like a stage set for a play about justice. Ivo sat on the other side with Mireya and her parents. They didn't look at me. Their lawyer, expensive suit, confident posture, whispered instructions. The bailiff called us to order. Judge Miller entered. Older woman, sharp eyes, no-nonsense expression. We're here for Rook versus Rook and Varela, property dispute. Let's proceed. Lisa presented our case first. Timeline. Medical records proving incapacity. Deed transfer during unconsciousness. Bank records showing attempted financial access. Rafe's witness statement. Dr. Serene's capacity notes. It was methodical, thorough, devastating. Their lawyer tried to poke holes, claimed I'd given verbal authorization before the medical event, produced a document allegedly showing I'd discussed transferring the property in case something happened. Lisa destroyed it. The document was dated after my hospitalization. The signature didn't match samples from before my incapacity. The notary couldn't recall the signing. Judge Miller asked pointed questions. Their lawyer stumbled, started using phrases like good faith and family understanding. None of it held. When it was my turn to testify, I walked to the stand and swore to tell the truth. Lisa asked me questions. I answered them exactly as we'd practiced. Calm, factual, direct. Their lawyer cross-examined, tried to make me angry, suggested I was bitter about my son's success, jealous of his marriage, unable to accept that I wasn't needed anymore. I didn't take the bait. I'm not bitter, I said. I'm just a man who wants his property back. The judge watched me carefully. I couldn't read her expression. After testimony, both lawyers made closing arguments. Then Judge Miller adjourned to review the evidence. We waited in the hallway. 45 minutes that felt like days. Finally, the bailiff called us back. Judge Miller looked at both sides. I've reviewed the evidence. This is straightforward. Mr. Rook was incapacitated at the time of the deed transfer. No power of attorney existed. No conservatorship was established. The transfer was unauthorized and therefore void. The property will revert to Mr. Galen Rook effective immediately. She continued. Additionally, I'm ordering the defendants to vacate within 7 days and to pay Mr. Rook's legal fees in full. This wasn't a good faith misunderstanding. This was an attempt to take advantage of someone's medical crisis. That's unacceptable. The gavel came down. Final. I didn't react, didn't smile, didn't celebrate, just nodded once and stood. Ivo stared at me across the room. His face was pale. Mireya whispered something harsh. Dario looked furious. Selma was crying. I walked past them without a word. Outside the courthouse, Lisa handed me papers. Congratulations. The sheriff's office will coordinate the lockout if they don't leave voluntarily. Call me if there's any trouble. Thank you. You earned this. Most people don't have the spine to see it through. I shook her hand and walked to my truck. Sat in the driver's seat. Didn't start the engine. Just sat there feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Vindication. Not happiness. Not relief. just the cold satisfaction of seeing consequences catch up to people who thought they were untouchable. 7 days later, I stood on the sidewalk in front of my house at 8 a.m. Deputy Marin Holt was already there, talking to Kellen Price, the locksmith I'd hired. Both of them checked paperwork. Both of them nodded at me when I approached. "Mr. Rook, you're the property owner?" "I am." "The court order is clear. We're here to enforce it. Are the current occupants inside?" "I don't know. We'll find out." Marin walked to the door and knocked. Hard. Official. No answer. She knocked again. "Sheriff's office. Open the door." Still nothing. "All right. Mr. Price, you're authorized to proceed." Kellen moved to the door with his tools, started working the lock. It took 30 seconds. The door opened. "Empty," he called back. We entered. The house smelled different, looked different, their furniture, their photos, their life imposed over mine. "We need to clear the property of unauthorized occupants' belongings," Marin said. "We have a crew on standby." She made a call. Within 15 minutes, a truck arrived. Workers in uniforms started carrying things out. Furniture, boxes, personal items, everything the Varellas had brought into my house. It piled up on the front lawn, a mountain of someone else's life. That's when the Varellas arrived. Dario's car screeched to a stop. He jumped out, Selma right behind him, both of them yelling, "What are you doing? You can't do this!" Marin stepped forward. "I'm Deputy Holt with the Sheriff's Office. I have a court order authorizing the removal of unauthorized occupants and their property. Step back, please. This is our house. We have rights. You don't. The court ruled against you. This is Mr. Rook's property. You have no legal standing here." Dario tried to push past her. Marin's hand went to her belt. "Sir, I will arrest you for interfering with a court order. Step back." He stopped. His face was red. Selma was crying. They watched helplessly as their belongings were carried out. Then Ivo and Mireya arrived. Ivo's face went pale when he saw the pile on the lawn. Mireya looked furious. "Dad, you can't do this. This is insane." I looked at her. "Your parents need to collect their things. They have 7 days to figure out where they're going." 7 days? They're in their 50s. They have nowhere. They should have thought about that before they moved into my house. Ivo stepped closer. "Dad, please. Let's talk about this. We can fix. There's nothing to fix. The judge ruled. This is enforcement. You're really going to do this? Throw them out on the street?" "I'm reclaiming what's mine. They can do whatever they want with their belongings. That's not my concern." Mireya's voice turned sharp. "You're a cruel old man. We were trying to help. You were stealing. There's a difference." She opened her mouth to respond, but Kellen appeared with new hardware. "Locks are changed. Here are your new keys, Mr. Rook." He handed me a set. I felt the cold metal in my palm. My keys. My house. Ivo stared at the keys like they were a weapon. "Dad, you need to leave. This is private property, and you're not welcome here." His face crumpled. For a second, he looked like the boy I'd raised. Lost. Confused. Hurt. Then Mireya grabbed his arm. "Come on. We're done here." They walked to their car. The Varellas loaded what they could into theirs. The rest stayed on the lawn. Marin approached me. "We're required to leave their belongings accessible for 48 hours. After that, you can dispose of them however you want. Clear?" "Clear." She handed me documentation. "Court order executed. Property restored to rightful owner. You're all set, Mr. Rook." She and Kellen left. The cleanup crew left. I stood alone on my front lawn, keys in hand, looking at the mountain of someone else's life that had invaded mine. Neighbors were watching from porches and windows. Rafe raised a coffee mug in silent salute. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The house was wrong. Different paint colors, different furniture arrangements, photographs of people I didn't know on the walls. But it was mine again. I walked through each room, kitchen, living room, bedrooms, bathroom, cataloging what they'd changed, what they'd damaged, what they'd presumed to make theirs. In the closet, I found the box of photos I'd worried they'd thrown away, still there, untouched. Maybe they didn't care enough to look. Maybe they didn't think it mattered. I opened it. Pictures of Ivo growing up, his first day of school, his graduation, his wedding. My whole life as a father reduced to a cardboard box in a closet. I closed it and put it back. Outside, the pile on the lawn was shrinking. The Varela's had returned with a rental truck. Dario and Selma loaded items silently, efficiently, like they'd done this before. Maybe they had. I watched from the window as they made trip after trip. Furniture, boxes, lamps, rugs, everything that had made them comfortable in my space for 7 months. By evening, most of it was gone. What remained was junk, broken items, things not worth saving. I called a disposal company, scheduled them for the next morning. They'd bring an industrial unit, one of those controlled burn containers used for estate cleanouts. Everything left would be incinerated, professional, legal, final. The next morning they arrived early, set up the burn unit on the edge of the lawn, started feeding items into it under supervision. Old clothes, damaged furniture, boxes of papers no one wanted. The flames reflected in the windows, orange and yellow against the glass. I stood inside and watched. Smoke rose in a thin column. The pile shrank. By noon, it was gone. Nothing left but ash in a contained unit that would be hauled away and disposed of properly. The crew packed up. The lead worker knocked on my door. "All set, Mr. Rook. Disposal receipt for your records." I took the paper, signed where he indicated. He tipped his cap and left. The lawn was empty now, clean, mine. I sat in my living room, in a chair that was mine, looking at walls that were mine, breathing air in a space that belonged to me. My phone buzzed. Ivo. One text. "I hope you're happy. You destroyed us." I stared at it for a long time. Then I blocked his number. Because he'd taught me something important. Family is a verb, not a noun. It's what you do, not what you're called. And he'd stopped being family the moment he decided I was already gone. I stood at the window as darkness fell. The street was quiet. Rafe's porch light came on. A car passed slowly. Tomorrow, the cleaning service would come. Tomorrow, I'd start the process of making this house feel like home again. But tonight, I just stood there and thought about how fragile certainty is, how quickly arrogance collapses, how thoroughly careful planning can destroy loud confidence. They'd thought they were untouchable. They'd learned otherwise. The last light faded from the sky. I locked the doors with my new keys and turned off the lights. They'd gambled that I'd never wake up, or that I'd wake up broken. They'd lost.